Welcome to the Impact Multiplier CEO podcast. If you're a chief executive, or if you think like one, and you want to create exponentially greater impact, then this show is for you. My name is Richard Medcalf, founder of Xquadrant. I coach some of the most successful and impressive CEOs and executive teams on the planet and help them achieve extraordinary results. And no matter how successful you've been in the past, there's always a whole new level of impact available to you. So, if you're ready to play a bigger game than ever before, I invite you to join us and become an Impact Multiplier CEO. Hello, are you there? Is this on mute? Hang on, the projector's not displaying the slides. Hang on, the technology's not working. Or can I get a glass of water? Well, look, presenting to an audience, particularly when in person, or whether it's on Teams or Zoom, is fraught with all sorts of challenges. And it's easy to think that this is because the act of delivering a message is in itself terrifying. But there's some merit to this fear, but perhaps much of the challenge lies elsewhere. And we're going to find out where today in the third episode of season 5 of the Impact Multiplier CEO podcast, From Ideas to Impact. And today, as usual, I'm here interviewing Davina Stanley from the Clarity First program about communication. And I'm Richard Medcalf, founder of Xquadrant, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation, Dav. It's great to see you again and great to talk about the real challenges of impactful communication today.
Yeah, no, thank you, Richard. It's lovely to come back and talk with you again too. And I loved your beginning. You did warn me, and I think you nailed it again.
There you go.
Which is great.
Going off the rails. Yeah. So, well, I just think it's a funny one, right? I mean, there's all sorts of things that go on when we're presenting, and so many logistical challenges and front of mind issues, and it can take our eye off the ball about what really matters sometimes, which is the message.
Can't it? Absolutely, it can. And I think, presenting communication in front of senior people, as you've mentioned, there can be really nerve-wracking, but also preparing papers and just having something clear to say in a meeting. It doesn't have to even be in front of the projector, but I think people very often focus very much on that delivery of the communication in whatever format it's in. I think we mentioned in the very first session that when I'm thinking about communication, I'm thinking about any situation where you've got to convey an idea. So I might talk about presentations or documents, but I'm thinking much more broadly than that. And it's very easy to think about the superficial stuff, the presentation of it, the delivery, the grammar, the writing style. Oh my goodness, English is my second language. I need help to write better. Is it really the writing you need? You can get that from a textbook, a primary school book even.
Yeah,
so is that really the help you need with your communication if you're, a middle to senior executive, so you can add value? I think the challenges lie somewhere else.
Yeah, so I guess you've got style and substance. And let's face it, sometimes we find people who have neither, or we find people who they do have substance, but the style is so bad it turns you off. So style is important, but probably by the time you got to a certain level, you're probably able not to totally, bore the pants off everybody who's listening.
Yeah.
The question is what you're saying going to move people to action or not?
Yes,
I guess that's what
exactly.
we want to get into the substance today.
It is.
So what have you got for us? Where are we going today?
I've got three things. And firstly, just focusing on the document first, I'd like to give you some examples and really bring that to life as to why focusing on the communication first and foremost is a risk. And instead, I think just like to share with you how once your ideas are sorted, so many of the other challenges around the delivery actually go away. And so I think if you focus on the substance first, a lot of these delivery problems, whether it's grammar or just confidence standing in front of a room, go away. And then I'd like to leave you with a challenge to focus on, to help you really focus on the substance and do that a little bit more effectively. So we've talked a little bit just now about style versus substance, which is a great way to break it up, I think. But when I guess one of the reasons this has been so important in the work that I'm doing is that I've seen so many teams have these great breakthroughs when they're shown a structured way to organize their ideas. And they're sometimes quite devastating. You know, I worked with a group of mining engineers a little while ago, and it was before COVID, so we were in a physical room together. And, you know, they're in groups building a story, building a piece of communication, a recommendation, or something that was relevant to their work, not doing an exercise. And, you know, I was going around the groups and helping the different groups with their communication. And this group, all of a sudden, they just wilted and went, oh, I think now we know why the last 2 times we went to present to the board, why they sent us packing. And they said, we've actually been solving the wrong problem. And they sort of, because they had this structured way of working out what their message should be, they realized actually they were answering the wrong question. So solving the wrong problem. So of course they weren't getting a buy-in from the board because they were solving the wrong thing. So that's one that I see that, you know, is terribly painful, and much better to work that out before you've presented to the board once or twice.
Yeah, and just think of the time and money that's been wasted on that, right? And it happens time and time again, right? The time and effort of people and all this stuff. And, you know, people sometimes you even fly around to present this stuff, right? And it doesn't have an impact. And so just
yes.
the time, the expense, the wasted opportunity costs, it's so
It's
expensive.
awful. Yeah, it is. No, it is. And it's also really demoralizing, I think. And I see in very big organizations, and we'll talk about collaboration in a later episode about ways to streamline the collaboration process. But, you know, my worst example, I've got to share this one, Richard, because it's just so dire that people won't believe it's real, but just to really magnify the issue, you know, when, you know, 15-page prose paper from, you know, a risk division, let's say, in a big organization, you know, it's a common sort of thing to be delivered. And 15 pages of prose is lengthy, but that's not uncommon for a senior sort of leadership or board. And imagine having 90 iterations of the one paper.
90.
90. Yes, I was going to spell the number out for you because I didn't think you'd believe me. Because you just think, how demoralizing. How many times, you know, did someone think, you know, take that home late at night to polish it and finish it and get it really right? And yes. So, you know, that's just 2 examples. I've got so many of them, but, you know, that just to illustrate why, you know, focusing on the document is the wrong place to start, really the wrong place to start. And
so just to say, I've got to butt in, but this reminds me of another Dilbert. We talked about Dilbert the other time, and this was Dilbert, like, who comes home late at night to his mother or something, and she's like, you know, what have you been doing? You were home very late. He said, oh yeah, I had to work really late, making a presentation worse for my manager or something, or a project that's just been cancelled or something like this, right? It was just, you know, I need to think how much time is being spent on internal, you know, internal iterations of this stuff. When there's customers that need serving.
Yes, absolutely. And look, I think sometimes, you know, people hear stories like the Amazon approach, where you've got to have the perfect 6-page narrative. And there's an assumption it's about the narrative. It is about the narrative, but it's more than just about the fact that it's prose and it's 6 pages. You know, the story that has come out of Amazon is that Jeff Bezos was the CEO of Amazon, I'm sure most people would know, was so frustrated with poor PowerPoints, he just banned them and said, and they do actually use PowerPoint sometimes, but for the most part, they use prose in a very, very structured way. They have, you know, a 6-page narrative, and they have a great way of running their meetings around that narrative, which is, you know, all focused on style and substance. It's both of those things together. So, you know, you can imagine what it's like sitting in an Amazon meeting for a business case presentation where you've got, you know, everybody sitting around the table reading your paper quietly at the start of the meeting, the first 20 minutes, with their pens making notes and so on. They've not seen it before. They get it in the meeting, and then, you know, then they start the conversation, which, you know, is a brilliant discipline because everybody knows that everyone's going to read it. And I think it's tempting to think sometimes that people don't read the communication because, you know, it's big and it's thick and it's hard. So, they don't read it. They get to the meeting and try and wing it. So anyway, I think that's just an interesting sort of side story. But it's tempting to think that because they talk about their 6-page narrative, that it's all about the style. It's absolutely way more than that.
Okay.
Way more than that. So substance. We should talk about that, shouldn't we?
So we're saying let's not focus on the document to start with. Let's make sure that we focus on the substance, right, and get the structure or the messages. So how do you reckon people do that? How do we build substance?
We certainly focus more on the thinking part before we prepare a piece of communication. And I'd always encourage people with something substantial to get their ideas on a single page and to be able to articulate that single message that we talked about last time. That was the challenge that we gave people. See if you can work out, I think this was in the first episode, work out what that single message is that you're wanting to convey. The panic button message, as you called it. If the panic button is hit and you've only got a minute, what's the key thing that you want to convey? So it's absolutely focusing on that, but it's also, frankly, to give yourself permission to focus on the substance. And I think that can be part of the challenge, asking for and having permission in your thinking process to focus on the thinking, not to deliver a completed, beautiful 6-page narrative or 15-page narrative, which has been written as a document without working out what the high-level points are and what the supporting points are, and socializing them beforehand. And if we're sort of talking about this difference in the split between style and substance, one of my clients, another tech company, has quite the opposite approach to Amazon, actually. And they actually say, okay, if you spend too much time on making your charts look beautiful, you're investing your time in the wrong place. So what they do is, and they apologized to me, and they actually said when I started working with them, they said, please do not teach our people to do perfect charts and to focus on that, because we actually counterculturally don't do that. We have what we call a doc, and it'll be a Google Doc, because everyone can chip in and edit. So it's a Google Doc with charts thrown in. And you throw a chart in when you feel like you need it. So that whole idea that you can focus on the substance and get that really crystal clear, I think is really key. And even when people have English as a second language, if their thinking is clear, and I saw this, when working at McKinsey, I've seen it in coaching people in my own practice since leaving the firm as well, where people can quickly become the go-to person for communication. If they're good at getting that single message and the maybe 3 points that sit underneath that, and really anchoring their whole communication around that. The word choice doesn't matter. They forgive you if English is your second language.
And here's the thing, once you get that really simple story, actually, if you've got your corporate presentation, you can just stick that into the appendix or whatever, or just copy and paste Excel slide, charts somewhere. If people want it, it's there in raw format, and people normally don't care. They can find it on the, if they need it. So I often say, if people feel they've got to get their presentation just right, say no, do the bare minimum on the corporate slides, so the data's there for people who want it, but then focus your time on the 2 pages that's going to tell your story.
Because ultimately these decision-making forums are all about discussion too, aren't they? They're about insight, about having a really good discussion about the sorts of material that wants to be conveyed. So I think I'd love to encourage people to focus far more on those ideas that they're conveying. And I think you have a term which I love, Richard, about being strategically lazy. Focus on the one pager, have your one pager really clear. And I think people will be surprised how often that's enough. Then you bring your charts in your back pocket so you can put them up and share them and so on. And if the thinking's really powerful, I think people are much more engaged, aren't they?
Absolutely. It's trying to make it. It's trying to really bring it down to a discussion that needs to be had, right? And how can you get into the discussion that needs to be had as quickly as possible? So,
absolutely.
So, Dev, what's the challenge for people, right? So they kind of understand that it's not about the document. It's it's not about creating something that's going to be iterated. all this time. It's not about creating the most beautiful quality thing. It's making sure that there's a substance and a message that's going to create that discussion. So what can people do? How could they actually move forward and tie these ideas together?
Beautiful. Okay, so I think first of all, I'd consider your initial draft as a brainstorm. So psychologically prepare yourself to need to do something like a brainstorm. And if you are somebody who likes to think out loud, find someone to talk to get your ideas out, or just get a Word doc and just belt them in. But, if you're preparing an email, let's say, don't draft in your email, don't draft in your final template, don't draft in PowerPoint, just blurt your ideas down or put them on a whiteboard or do something like that that's different to the thing that you're going to use to communicate.
Nice.
So that you can get all the ideas out. Because as you go through that process, I mean, how often does the insight pop into your mind at the end of your brainstorm? And a bit like we talked about with the oh golly, now I'm trying to remember what we were calling it, the stream of consciousness communication, where you're just sort of going from idea to idea to idea. The ideas do come, and then bang, there's the idea. So if you're doing that brainstorm in a different format, you stop yourself from sending that as your communication. So I think that's number one. Separate out your brainstorming and your communicating. And we've talked a few times about having one key thought and a small number of supporting points. So we've sort of given the game away a little bit already, in the sense, where, get your ideas on a page, and if you're going to socialize it around that single page. And I would have one tip to help you, declutter your communication that is about language, and that is use active voice. And so when I say active voice, what I mean by that is I kicked the ball, not the ball was kicked by me.
Right.
Okay. So that's the only thing I teach in around, grammar and language use. Everything we do is around the thinking and getting that one pager right, and getting the ideas really clear, so that you can then, pack a real punch and deliver, ideas that really matter to other people.
So what I'm hearing about this is, first of all, this idea of switching medium, right? Getting out of the PowerPoint or the Word or whatever you can do it in, and use some other way just to get yourself thinking differently and at a different level. Just write some ideas in a book, circle things, join the dots, mind map, whatever you want to do. Focus in on that, one idea, and then 3 to 5 points underneath. If again, it's like the core thrust, right, of what you want to do. And then as well, keep to the active voice, right? Because when you're always, it was done, that, whatever, it's just, when you're ever in the world of was, it's or is, it's hard, rather than just the direct verb of.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
And and again, I suppose I'd also, just say, for anyone listening, Dav, she's been very modest not mentioning it, right? But she has a great book about these very topics. What's the book called, Dav? Just remind us.
The So What Strategy.
The So What Strategy. There we go.
Yes. So we play a bit of a pun on, I'll hold it up for those watching on the video, on the term so what. The so what we call the key message, the thing that really matters, but also it's that question you don't want to be asked at the end of your presentation. So what was that all about?
Right.
Hence the name of the book.
There you go. So what strategy? So this is great. I've recently just sent a whole bunch of people on one of my coaching programs the book, because I think it's a helpful, really helpful way for them to think about their own presentation impact. And then of course you have the Clarity First program as well. We can put links to that in the show notes, which is an online kind of membership site where you get to kind of go deep into all these ideas. Is that right?
Absolutely, you do, yes. And we teach a really structured way of getting your ideas onto a page, and blend the things that we've been talking about in the show around, business acumen and understanding your audience, and how do you actually do that, and so on. Yeah,
perfect. Great. Well, I think next time we're going to dive into thinking skills. Is that right? We're going to.
We are. Yes, 2 specific ones.
Okay, so we'll find out what those 2 are next time. So that's the cliffhanger.
It is the cliffhanger.
And we'll be back next time. Well, thanks again, Dav. I really enjoyed this episode, and look forward to continuing the discussion next time.
Likewise. Thanks again, Richard.
Bye now.
If you've been enjoying this series, you may like some more ideas that will help you communicate with impact, especially if you're dealing with complex material. My free course, How to Communicate with Impact, does just that. In this course, I cover 4 areas. How to get faster, more useful responses to your communication. Secondly, how your audiences really read your communication. Thirdly, how to communicate the right amount of detail. And finally, how to communicate powerful insights that cut through. So you can access this course by using this link, www.clarityfirstprogram.com/impact-podcast. I hope you find this useful and look forward to bringing more ideas to you through our upcoming podcasts. Thanks so much and bye for now.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Now let's talk about you. When you're in top leadership, when you're in the biggest role of your career, who supports you at a deep level as you lead others? Who helps you multiply your impact and get to the next level? If you're ready to learn more about our content, our coaching, and our community, then visit us at xquadrant.com.